What's up, guys? This is my first video. Today I'm going to be ranking what, in my opinion, are the 5 hardest bosses in Kirby Star Allies. The only thing that won't count are EX bosses since I haven't played many of them. Without further ado, let's get into it. So for number 5, I think Krakow is the 5th easiest boss. I think Krakow is the 5th easiest boss because of his second phase. The first phase is pretty simple. All you do is just hit him a bunch of times, and then he's pretty much gone. It's not that difficult. However, the second phase involves 2 Krakows, which I find pretty difficult. So in the second phase, when there are 2 Krakows, it's not like pawn and con where you only take out one and then one's down. No, it's not like that. You have to beat them both, but they're both always there, which makes it a little bit more difficult than pawn and con. Well, not a little bit, but way harder. And so when the main attack that Krakow and the twin Krakow will use is their down waterfall, and it does a lot of damage. And so even though it does a lot of damage, it's the exact same thing as Krakow, but it does a little bit more damage. It's a little bit harder, and there's 2 of them, so it's kind of hard to avoid. So next on our list, I think number 4 belongs to Void Soul. Void Soul is basically what's termed as fourth phase, and I find him to be quite the challenge. Now, I think Void would be a harder boss than Void Soul, but like I said, I haven't played every EX boss, so Void doesn't count. And so Void Soul is a pretty challenging boss in my opinion. He has lasers and a lot of really hard attacks to avoid, and they're pretty difficult. The only thing about Void Soul is that Void Soul, sometimes his attacks will move a little slow sometimes, but overall they do a lot of damage, and he's a really tough boss. Now, if you have Dream Friends, then it's one of the only bosses that Dream Friends can actually attack you with, making it really difficult to defeat him. So that is why, because, well, first off, he can actually take away some of your Dream Friends and friends that you have on your side. And you'll need to hit X or whatever Joy-Con or whatever controller you're using, and use friend cards to get them back. Now, the reason why Void Soul is only number 4 and Void Termina won't be on this list is because, in my opinion, Void Termina and Void Soul, they're not the same boss. Void Termina, first of all, is a lot slower than Void Soul is. And his attacks, in my opinion, just don't do as much, and he's more easier to defeat than Void Soul. So now let's move on to number 3. So I think Mennonite is number 3 on this list because, like Krakow, his first phase is pretty bad. Yeah, this one right here. Krakow, only his first phase is really difficult, but Mennonite has a similar thing, except even his first phase is a little bit easier than Twin Krakow. But I think what really makes Mennonite's boss really hard is his second phase. Mennonite's second phase, in my opinion, is just so difficult because Mennonite's second phase has him spawning at least 1, 2, or 3 clones of himself. Most of the time, he spawns 3. And when there's 3 clones, only one of them, or at least all of them, take damage when you attack him. But the real one takes the most damage. And all of the attacks except for one attack that Mennonite does are really tricky to avoid. Now, the one that I think is pretty easy to avoid is when he just summons rocks that I guess slashes them. And that's not too difficult to avoid. But everything else about Mennonite is pretty difficult. Now, the only reason why I think he is not higher on this list is because, unlike some of the other bosses, He moves a bit slow when he's walking, but he moves a little bit faster in the air. But there's another thing. You know how in Kirby's Adventure and all other games, where he offers Kirby a sword, unless it's hypnotized, cyborg, or fake. Well, he still does that in Kirby's Their Allies. I don't even know why, but it makes it easier since you have a sword. But even still, Mennonite is quite the challenge. And yeah, moving on. Now we are moving on to Highness. So, similar to Mennonite and Krakow, the only reason why it's on this list is because of the second phase. But even his first phase is actually quite difficult, unlike some others on this list. Highness actually has a pretty difficult one for this first phase if you're away from him, because pretty quickly he'll summon huge fireballs. He summons fire things that go vertically. Anyway, they do a lot of damage if you get caught in them. So not only are they hard to avoid, but they do a lot of damage. So yeah, and just that is the first phase. Once he gets to like 1% of health, like 0.1% of health, you'll say jaw, and then you can't sit in and you don't know what he's saying. Anyways, his second phase is really difficult because Highness' second phase has all the three maid sisters and they're under his control, duh. And it's just a really hard boss fight because he's throwing all the maid sisters one by one and one. And it's just so difficult because the attacks do so much damage and he's really hard to avoid. And he's just so difficult because his attacks are like going on and on and on. And they do quite a lot of damage. And he's pretty difficult to defeat out of all of the regular bosses. No, not EX bosses. I already said that. And so I just think that he is really difficult. And the only major problem that Highness has is that he's actually, the attacks, some of them, like when he throws the maid sisters or his friend circle, those can be really easy to avoid. And that's my own problem. The friend circle can be avoided by simply jumping in the corner. I don't know why. Like you can literally jump at the corner and he misses you. Even though he clearly hits you. Whatever. And when he throws the three maid sisters, it's pretty easy to avoid. The only reason why I'm saying that is pretty easy to avoid is because you could just be close to him or underneath him or something like that, since he's always flying in the air. He's never on the ground. And even Unmasked Highness is the only real good part of the boss. The only problem is what I just said. So let's move on to the hardest boss, not EX, in the entire game. And for number one, I chose Morphinite. I didn't even have to think about this, but I knew Morphinite had to be number one. First off, his first phase is similar to Galactonite's. And yes, I'm saying Galactonite because he's actually Galactonite, but a butterfly lands on it. If you want to know that. Anyways, his first phase is pretty similar to Galactonite. It's a little different from Mennonite because he causes shockwaves sometimes. However, I think that once he gets to about a quarter of his health, things start to get really difficult. First off, he can shoot shockwaves, which will turn all your dream friends, like Void Soul, against you. He can also summon a huge gas thing, and sometimes it'll be a little small, but there's more of them. And sometimes there's a big one that's harder to avoid, but there's only one of them. However, I think that there is a lot more because he has many different attacks and all of them do a lot of damage. Like for example, he uses two massive swords and he just swings them. One on the left, one on the right, and then on here, like right in the middle and swings them both like that. Anyways, Morphinite truly deserves to be there because in number one, because not only does he have a lot of attacks like Ike's Final Smash from Super Smash Bros. He has the two swords. He has the summoning gas thing. He has a lot of those attacks. But what really stands out here is that they all do a lot of damage. Yes, he's not the perfect boss because there are some upsides and downsides. But even still, Morphinite is a really difficult boss that I don't think anyone can top except for EX bosses, of course, because they even need more Morphinite EX. And that'll be for another video when I complete that. And it's just so difficult to defeat Morphinite. This guy right here. And Morphinite is just a pain to beat. And with that is all bosses. Well, not all of them, but 5 bosses. And in my opinion, the top 5 hardest bosses in Kirby Star Allies. And OEX bosses, like I said. That concludes the top 5 hardest bosses in Kirby Star Allies. Also, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and the like button and notification button bell. And with that, have a great day.
Come to my show party.